my first 31 days of Halloween recap video for the month. I've got a few more to come after this. So if you don't know or don't participate, 31 Days of Halloween, also known as 31 Days of Horror or 31 Days of October, it comes around, obviously, every October where film lovers, horror lovers all compete in a challenge to, the basic popular version is to watch one horror film a day. I find that easy and boring and not really a challenge. So what I do, and what I've been doing for the last few years, is I try to see how many movies I can watch in that 31-day period, and then the following year I try to beat that record. Last year in October I watched 204 movies, so this year I have to watch at least 205 to break my record. Probably be best to just stick to 205 if I can do it. In each recap I will go through and talk about and give kind of like a brief little tiny review on my thoughts on each film that I've watched. I watch them in alphabetical order. So today I'm recapping the first 29 films that I have watched, I think. 25 or 29, I don't know, we'll find out as we go. So, with that said, let's just get into today's recap because I've slacked off a bit today on account of my niece being here, so I've got a lot of catching up to do. I've lost too much time, so let's just do this. Film number one, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation because I'm not German, is Abgeschnitten. I heard them say it in the film, I'm pretty sure that's not how you say it, but anyway. It's a 2018 German thriller film written and directed by Christian Albert based on the novel of the same name by Sebastian Fitzek with medical specialist Michael Sokos. Again, I don't know all these foreign names. So it follows coroner Paul Hersfeld, who finds a capsule in the head of a heavily mutilated corpse containing a phone number and a single word, the name of his daughter. The film is a cat and mouse story, but with a different take on the subject where you're not sure who is the cat or the mouse. The story is very interesting, but quite hard to follow at times. This was only made harder due to the fact the subtitles, though in English, made very little sense, and I think that might have been my copy, but I don't know. The film has several unexpected twists and an ending I wasn't expecting at all, which were great. Great performances, good story, overall a good start to October. Number two is Absentia, a 2011 American independent supernatural horror film written and directed by Mike Flanagan. It follows a pregnant woman whose missing husband briefly reappears after an unexplained 7-year absence. Another film that just solidifies that I don't like the work of Mike Flanagan. I appear to have a strong dislike for his style of filming and the stories he writes. When it comes to this film, it was a film made thanks to crowdfunding and you could see it in the production. Not that that's a bad thing, but it didn't feel like the film made attempts to hide that fact. The performances are decent, but the story is quite lackluster, with it unfortunately having no conclusion. I do not enjoy open-ended films as I find them very frustrating, and he tends to do that kind of thing. The score was an annoyance as it often would build up and increase in volume over moments where people are talking and it drowned out the conversation. The music would also always be building up to something, but nothing was happening or about to happen. Instead, when things were happening, we had silence instead. It was not pleasant on the ears. The story was an interesting concept. I just wish more had been fleshed out, and I wish the film didn't choose to do what every other film in the world does, and that's to write its police characters as arrogant, incompetent assholes. If all officers acted as stupid and hostile towards people in real life, no one would ever report a crime. Admittedly, this film had some rather good jump scares that take you completely by surprise, which was nice, but overall it was just meh. Number three is Acolytes, a 2008 Australian horror thriller film directed by John Hewitt and written by Shane Armstrong and Shane Krause. The plot is about three teenagers who decide to blackmail a serial killer. This is a mixed bag. For the first half of the film, I was strongly disliking everything, with every element reminding me of everything I hate, not only in Australian horror, but in Australian cinema. The trio dynamic, a girl dating a jerk who treats her like crap while the friend watches on jealous, girl painted as overly promiscuous for no reason, teens being a pack of idiot teens for no good reason. It was just getting irritating, but then the film takes quite a shift and it actually becomes interesting and enjoyable, with it having a reveal that I wasn't expecting and quite enjoyed. There's a weird theme how so many Australian horror films like to depict rape and they don't discriminate on what gender gets raped, but they do often have the victims being quite young. Joel Edgerton doesn't appear until 35 minutes into the film, but to my surprise, he was a brilliant villain. His appearance is a combination of Chopper Read and Ivan Milat, with his character being very much modelled after Ivan Milat. These are Australian criminals and serial killers. You'd have to go Google them. I can also see some similarities between this film and Hounds of Love, and wonder if Hounds of Love took inspiration from this film. Overall, slow, irritating start, but great shift and solid ending. Number 4 is The Addams Family, a 1991 American supernatural black comedy directed by Barry Sonnenfeld in his screen debut, and written by Caroline Thompson and Larry Wilson, based on the characters from the cartoon created by cartoonist Charles Addams and the 1964 TV series. The film focuses on a bizarre, macabre, aristocratic family who reconnects with who they believe to be a long-lost relative, Gomez's brother Fester Addams, who is actually the adopted son of a con artist intending to swindle the Addams clan out of their vast wealth and fortune. You can't go wrong with this film. Costumes, performances, writing, which is so witty and ingenious, even the score, it's all on point, including lighting techniques, and despite everyone seeing this family as eccentric and as freaks, they are probably more functional and kind and giving than most people in the world. I would even call Gomez and Morticia relationship goals. Passionately in love, devoted and fiercely loyal to each other and their family. I love the subject of family in this movie. It's more inclusive and open-minded than a lot of families today, and that's saying something. The Addams Family is a brilliant gothic masterpiece, and this is why I watch it every October. Number 5 is Addams Family Values, a 1993 American supernatural black comedy film directed by Barry Sonnenfeld and written by Paul Rudnick. It is a sequel to the 1991 film and follows a serial killer who marries Uncle Fester, intending to murder him for his inheritance, while teenagers Wednesday and Pugsley are sent to summer camp. Sequels are usually never better or even as good as the original, but Addams Family Values is just as fun and brilliantly entertaining as the first, and in so many ways even more so. The addition of Debbie, the Black Widow, was genius and works with the style of the film perfectly. I could watch these actors play these roles forever. The sequel is more fun, more adventurous, and has even more quotable dialogue than the first film. I mean, God, these films were just perfect. Number 6, All Hallows Eve, is a 2013 American horror anthology film directed and written by Damien Leone in his first feature film debut. The film incorporates scenes from two of Leone's earlier shorts, The Ninth Circle and Terrifier, and follows a babysitter who finds a VHS tape which features various sinister murders performed by a psychotic clown. One of the better horror films I've seen, enough to make me return to it each year. It is absolutely perfect for Halloween and features what I consider to be the best horror clown ever to be introduced in a movie. Sadistic, demonic, silent, and deadly, I think this is a brilliant way for Leone to incorporate all his short films into one full-length film, and it works perfectly. He's created the perfect horror villain, and for an independent film, it is better than most big-budget ones in terms of quality. The effects are good and pretty effective. Pretty effective. And the acting is surprisingly good and includes a well thought out plot. I also should mention how perfect the score is. I haven't appreciated it enough in the past, but it is so good. Number 7 is Terrifier, a 2016 American horror film written and directed by Damien Leone, based on Leone's short film of the same name, which was featured in his anthology All Hallows Eve. In it, a maniacal clown terrorizes 3 young women on Halloween night and everyone who stands in his way. This never disappoints me. What I love about Art is that he doesn't fit into a stereotypical maniac role. Aspects of him make him appear supernatural, while others make him appear human, and the combination of the two is incredibly unnerving. There is just so much to say about this movie, so I suggest checking out my full-length review, which is also on my channel. Number 8 is Amusement, a 2008 American anthology horror film directed by John Simpson and written by Jake Wade Wall. It follows 3 women who are stalked by a killer with a grudge that extends back to the girls' childhoods. I wasn't sure what to expect from this, but I actually ended up enjoying it. It starts off feeling like 3 separate stories, but I like that the film actually unites them into one single story. I don't think the execution was as seamless as it had hoped, but I still see what it was aiming for, and it's still a good watch, and I would actually probably watch it again, as it appears to have a rewatchable quality I find rare these days. Could have lived without our killer's maniacal laugh. It was just over the top and not at all scary, just irritating. So, number 9, April Fool's Day, is a 1986 American mystery slasher film directed by Fred Walton and written by Danilo Buck. The plot follows a group of college students vacationing during April Fool's Day weekend on an island estate which is infiltrated by an unknown assailant. I'd actually seen this many years ago, but wasn't sure if I remembered it right. It seems for the most part I have remembered it accurately. I didn't enjoy it the first time, but second time around I actually got a real kick out of it. I know there are people who dislike the ending, but I really dig it as it does stand out from the norm and try something different while holding true to the title of the film and having a logical plot. It's a fun slasher film and well executed, and definitely feels like Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians but with a twist. Number 10, April Fool's Day is a 2008 American direct-to-video slasher film directed by the Butcher Brothers, Mitchell Altieri and Phil Flores, and written by the Butcher Brothers and Mikey Wiggett. A remake of the 1986 film of the same name, in it a year after an April Fool's Day prank which resulted in the death of one of their set, a group of friends find themselves targeted by someone who is out for revenge. The Butcher Brothers directed a film called The Hamiltons, which I watched either last year or the year before that, and I really loved that film and do recommend checking that out. Sadly, this film is not at the same level as that film. I didn't find it to be as terrible as people said, but in all honesty, it is Gossip Girl on crack if it was also a slasher. So many elements to this film, 100% can be found in every episode of Gossip Girl. The ending is pretty predictable, but then it adds in another twist, which was decent. A few moments in this film felt like a spoof. We're talking scary movie kind of spoof. The dialogue for the most part is dreadful, and it just honestly wasn't necessary to even make, but considering what I've watched in past Octobers, this is far from the worst film I've ever seen. Number 11, The Axiom, is a 2018 American horror film written and directed by Nicholas Woods. In it, at the risk of her group's safety, a young woman travels into a national forest where her sister has become trapped in a multi-dimensional world of monsters. Based on the poster, I thought this was going to suck, and to my surprise, it didn't. Guaranteed there are some character motivations I'm not sure about, but I still ended up enjoying it. There are some mild sci-fi elements to it, and though the monster makeup was highly unrealistic, I actually didn't mind it, though one monster 100% looked like Ludo from the Labyrinth. Performances and directing was good, and the story was quite interesting. It's not the first film about people getting lost in a forest that distorts space and time, but I did like this film's take on it. Number 12, The Basement, a 2018 American horror film directed by Brian M. Conley and Nathan Ives and written by Conley, Ives, and Sean Decker. In it, a seemingly innocent man is abducted by a notorious LA serial killer who forces his victims to roleplay with him so that he can enact his captures, torture, and murder fantasies. This film has a predictable plot twist. You can see it coming a mile away just from the opening narration alone. The film wastes so much energy trying to paint the killer as a sufferer of multiple personality, like it's trying to be the next Split, only to turn around and say the guy is acting. It's such a waste, though I guess I'd rather the acting, because the way he tries to portray multiple personalities is just utterly stupid, like Split. The film keeps pushing the Gemini, Zodiac, and twins plot point, but does nothing with it, as specifically the twin element has no purpose and contributes nothing to the film. This movie is just stupid and boring. It gave me nothing, though I will say being decapitated with a blowtorch is a new one. Number 13, The Birds, a 1963 American horror thriller film directed by Alfred Hitchcock from a screenplay by Evan Hunter, loosely based on the 1952 story of the same name by Daphne de Maura. It focuses on a series of sudden and unexplained violent bird attacks on the people of Bodega Bay, California over the course of a few days. I may have watched this movie as a child with my mother, but I can't exactly recall, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed this film. There's a slow progression to the events of the film. There's no real rhyme or reason to what is going on, but given we're dealing with animals, that's okay. Looking at it from a 60s perspective, I love the style, the way it was shot, and the performances. These films truly are moments in time down to the dialogue. I enjoyed the concept, but was very disappointed by the ending, as there was no conclusion, it just ended. We don't know what becomes of Bodega Bay or why the birds became homicidal, and I wish I had answers to those questions. It is, however, the only film I have seen set in Bodega Bay, which is fun for me because in Charm that's where Dan is from. It's an interesting and incredibly well-made film though. Number 14 is Blackout, a 2018 psychological thriller directed by Rigoberto Castaneda and written by Ed Doherty, based on the novel by the same name by Gianluca Morosi. 3 people from different walks of life find themselves trapped inside a stalled elevator. What at first seems like an inconvenience rapidly escalates into a nightmare. You knew right off the bat who the serial killer was going to be, but the film takes forever to reveal that fact, so you're almost an hour in before any of the tension is introduced into the film. This film reminds me of Devil, as they are very similar, only Devil was actually more interesting. The narrative is non-linear, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't work. The cinematography is all over the shop, as is the editing, and the directing was an absolute mess. I suppose the acting was okay, but with everything else, it doesn't make you want to watch or care about the acting. I'm not sure why this is called Blackout. As far as I can tell, the elevator has power and the building has power, the block has power. So where is the blackout the title is talking about? If you're a fan of Aidan Gillen or Armie Hammer, then I guess it's worth a watch, but I don't really recommend it. Number 15, The Blob is a 1958 independently made American science fiction horror film directed by Irvin Yerworth and written by Kay Lineker and Theodore Simonson from a story by Irving H. Milgate. The storyline concerns a growing corrosive alien amoeboidal, whatever you want to call it, entity that crashes to Earth from outer space inside a meteorite. It devours and dissolves citizens in the small community, growing larger, redder, and more aggressive each time it does so, eventually becoming larger than a building. I really enjoyed this film. It's soft and pleasant and wholesome, even though a man-eating blob is on the loose. It's just so easy to just sit back and watch and enjoy it. Even the jokes in this film are good, guys. I also think this film anticipated climate change, which was funny. The effects used for the blob were super impressive for 1958, and I enjoyed it. Loved the directing, the acting, everything, and I think this film has the best theme song of all time because it's been stuck in my head for 2 days. Number 16, Beware the Blob, aka Beware the Blob, Son of the Blob, Blob 2, or The Blob Returns. It's a 1972 British independent comedy science fiction horror film directed by Larry Hagman with a screenplay by Anthony Harris and Jack Woods from a story by Richard Clare and Jack H. Harris. It is a sequel to The Blob and sees a technician bring a frozen specimen of the original blob back from the North Pole. When his wife accidentally defrosts the thing, it terrorizes the populace, including the local hippies, kittens, and bowlers. Beware the Blob, more like beware this movie. What the hell was that god-awful opening? It was like watching a random 2-minute cat video. This film is the perfect example of 70s filming, and it is bad. The story is bad, the characters are awful, and the performances, yikes. Pretty sure they were stoned when they made this. I think everyone involved, including actors, was stoned through this entire film. It's a sequel, yet the start of the film involves a guy sitting and watching the 1958 film on TV, but he has a sample of the blob which came from the North Pole just like the end of the movie, so no one thought that through. The third act attempts to copy the third act of the first film, and now we're less of a sequel and more of a remake. Worst improv ever. Just no. Never again. No. Number 17, The Blob, a 1988 American science fiction horror film directed by Chuck Russell with a screenplay by Russell and Frank Darabont from a story by Irving H. Milgate. It's a remake of the 1958 film and follows a deadly blob from another planet which consumes everything in its path. Teenagers attempt without success to warn the townspeople who refuse to take them seriously. If you know me, then you know I'm strongly against remakes as they tend to be crap. This one I actually liked. It keeps some elements of the original film but makes some changes too, but it makes smart changes. The blob is now a man-made organism, which makes total sense. It's sentient and predatory, which makes it more menacing and interesting, and the kills in this film are actually pretty awesome. It's a fun 80s horror film that made its point very well and didn't make me overthink anything and just allowed me to have a good time. It was logical, well written, well performed, and directed. This film is a great example of how to do a good remake, so colour me impressed. I think it's another film that depicts stupid police officers, and it certainly is annoying, but still a good watch. I can't find a fault in it. Number 18, Boo, a 2018 American horror mystery film directed by Luke Jaden and written by Jaden and Diane Michelle. In it, a torn suburban family refuses to heed the warnings of an innocent prank left upon them, which causes an unknown supernatural force to wreak havoc. Well made, well acted, but boring as all get out. There's no real story to follow. How everything happens is not really explained. It's just a, that's just how it is kind of thing. Takes some time before events even make sense, but mostly it's just boring and uneventful. There was potential for a good story, but nothing is really fleshed out. It tries but fails, and there's just no point. Number 19, Book of Monsters, is a 2018 British horror comedy film directed by Stuart Sparky and written by Paul Butler. In it, Sophie's 18th birthday becomes a bloodbath when monsters descend upon her house and start to devour the party guests. Sophie and her friends must rally together to send their party crashers back to hell. Well, colour me surprised again. This isn't the first film on this list to be made thanks to crowdfunding, but this one is the best. Everything was great. It was well thought out. It's a great story. The plot is fleshed out, and motivations and backstories and context are revealed perfectly. It makes a lot of sense and is a lot of fun. The quality feels like those B horror movies that become cult classics, only I'd say this is slightly higher quality. The monsters aren't realistic, but I don't mind. They reminded me of The Dark Crystal. It had that Jim Henson meets M. Night Shyamalan in The Village kind of style to them, which oddly enough worked. It's very girl power, but not in an in-your-face way. It's just very natural, and it has great LGBT representation. I shouldn't have to keep mentioning things like this, but this is how you go about it. It's natural. It's not relying on stereotypes. It's not trying to push an agenda. It's just being a normal film with normal characters, and that's what films should strive for, so I loved it. Yeah, there were some characters I didn't love who I could have lived without, and I'm very certain most of the school students were in their late 20s to early 30s, but that aside, I had a fun time, and I would happily donate money to help this get a sequel, because it's got the potential for one. And due to me posting my review of it, I ended up getting a like, a follow, and a comment from the director, and I asked him if they're making a sequel, and he did say they're working on a script. So, yay! I guess I have to go pay that $5 now. Number 20 is Camp Wedding, a 2019 horror comedy film directed by Greg Emetaz and written by Emetaz from a story by Cara Consilvio. In it, Mia's destination wedding seems doomed when her bridal party is not too keen on doing all the work to transform a dilapidated summer camp into the venue of her dreams. When they begin to be killed off mysteriously, that doesn't help either. This movie was insane, stupid, idiotic, just absolutely batshit crazy in ways I can't even begin to describe, and yet for some reason I found it super entertaining. Honestly, it has messed with my head. I shouldn't like something so dumb so much, but I did. In fact, I'd even watch it again, I think. If you're not a fan of horror comedies, then don't watch this, but if you are all for having a fun, ridiculous time with horror undertones, then I say go to town watching this. And for anyone who said this film is a Friday the 13th ripoff, that is a load of crap. It has nothing in common or similar to Friday the 13th. It's very modern. We have text exchanges and kills being posted on Instagram, for Pete's sake. I don't even recall any references to Friday the 13th. The only thing they have in common is they take place in a campground, which thousands of other films have done. Did no one else see Sleepaway Camp? I think this film stands apart from those films and has its own merits, especially being that it is not just a horror film, but a horror comedy film. So, yeah. It was a blast. There were some moments where I'm thinking, oh my god, this film is so freaking dumb. And yet my eyes are glued to the screen and I can't look away because it's just so ridiculous that I'm thoroughly entertained. And, lucky for me, that when I posted this, my post got liked and shared by the company or studio that made the film. I think the director liked it, the producer liked it and commented on it. I think she was also the writer of the film. I had an actress writer. Book of Monsters and Camp Wedding have been doing wonders for my social media, let me just tell you that. But no, honestly, it feels really great to see the people involved in making the film actually recognizing that I recognize their work and that I love it. So that actually makes me happy because I did enjoy these films. Number 21, Casper Meets Wendy, a 1998 direct-to-video American fantasy family comedy film directed by Sean McNamara and written by Jim Megan, based on the Harvey Comics cartoon characters Casper the Friendly Ghost and Wendy the Good Little Witch. It's a sequel to Casper, A Spirited Beginning, while being the second prequel/spin-off to the 1995 film Casper. In it, Casper, a ghost, teams up with Wendy, a witch, against an evil warlock. It has been forever since I've seen this film, and it was still a blast. It was sweet and cute, has a good story about morals and friendship and coming together in spite of differences. It was just an all-around fun, feel-good movie. Was happy to reconnect with it and spot so many quotes and references from other movies. I mean, there was Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, Poltergeist, Hocus Pocus, Snow White, Men in Black, Pulp Fiction, Starship Troopers, and James Bond, and that's just the ones I noticed. Although that human kid used to creep me out when I was younger, and now I know why. That kid for sure was a predator in training. You just know he grew up to become a wife beater and a rapist. That kid was nuts. But anyway, blast of a film. Number 22, The Cell 2, a 2009 American direct-to-video sequel to the 2000 film The Cell, directed by Tim Locofano and written by Alex Barda, Rob Runau, and Lawrence Silverstein. It follows the cusp, a serial killer who kills his victims and then brings them back to life over and over until they beg to die. Psychic Maya is an investigator who gained her power after being in a 1-year coma caused by being the Cusp's first victim. Now the Cusp is back, and with no time for perpetration, Maya has to enter into the killer's mind to save his latest victim. Am I the only one who didn't even know there was a sequel to The Cell? This film has small connections to the first film, but has none of the same characters. It's yet another film that depicts cops being absolute arrogant pricks. Scriptwriters need to stop this. It is officially my new pet peeve on a long list of pet peeves. Though in this case, the FBI agent was the prick and the cop was a no-nonsense, straight arrow kind of guy. When they reveal this serial killer, it is not very revealing, as the film makes it painfully obvious in the first few minutes who the killer is. Not to mention, he's played a killer before and just naturally gives off those vibes. And he is so infuriating. The guy has medical training and yet uses a defibrillator wrong, and when performing CPI is doing compressions on her stomach. He's nowhere near the heart, he's not even on her rib cage. He sucks, and yet this crap worked. On top of that, he takes her pulse with his thumb, which you just don't do. It's not the worst sequel in the world, if I'm honest, but it's not the best either. It's more like an average Sunday afternoon movie, not all that similar to The Cell, and relies too much on special effects, and the third act makes virtually no sense. Also, The Cusp is a horrible serial killer nickname. I'll still say this film was just okay. Number 23, Cellar Dweller is a 1988 horror film directed by John Carl Buechler and written by Don Mancini. It's about a comic book artist who unleashes a demon after drawing on it. Most horror films of this era were hella cheesy with low production, but I'm honestly surprised by the quality of this movie. Admittedly, the monster looks quite ridiculous, but I think everything else is of such a high standard that it makes it fairly easy to overlook. The film didn't exactly keep me glued to the screen, as much about it felt familiar. Perhaps other films in later years were modelled after this. Hell, I think maybe even a Charmed episode took inspiration from this, but it's still a really decent and well executed film where I can find little fault in it, which says a lot when you factor in the decade. The opening did greatly bug me, as the artist was clearly just doing what so many films do and have the actor colour over work the prop department has already made. But to make it worse, he was colouring it in with a real fountain pen. I'm talking old school metal tip you dip in ink. You only use these types of ink pens for line work and detailing or calligraphy. This guy was flat out trying to colour in entire pages with this. I imagine artists watching this would be cringing in pain at the sight. Number 24, Cherry Tree Lane, a 2010 British urban dramatic real-time horror thriller film written and directed by Paul Andrew Williams. In it, a couple is terrorised by a gang who is hunting their son. What in the holy hell was this? This is the crappiest excuse for a film. It's not dramatic, it has no horror or thriller elements whatsoever. The film moves at a snail's pace with possibly the worst dialogue known to man. It is absolutely pointless, with no suspense or tension to be found. We are never given a better understanding of any of the characters, so you don't have any feelings towards anyone. It was utterly irritating how shit the quality is with some absurd camera shot choices. This film went nowhere fast, and I found myself hoping the entire house would burn down and everyone inside would die. This is the dumbest pack of criminals on the planet. Doesn't matter the intent or what they did, you can tell they're all dumb enough to have records, and they touch virtually everything in the house. These morons will be in jail within hours of their crime. Just stupid. So what if the bad guy decides to kick the crap out of someone? It's random, pointless, and being subjected to by a character we don't know or care about, from another character we don't know or care about. Go watch Funny Games instead. This film is just as basically watching three thugs watch TV for an hour with a random rape scene thrown in, but even that is off screen, so we can instead watch more of one of the thugs watching TV. Number 25, Christine, a 1983 American horror film directed by John Carpenter with a screenplay by Bill Phillips based on Stephen King's 1983 novel of the same name. The movie follows the changes in the lives of Arnie Cunningham, his friends, his family, and his teenage enemies after Arnie buys a vintage 1958 Plymouth Fury, which is actually a 1958 Plymouth Belvedere, named Christine, a car that seems to have a jealous, possessive personality and a mind of its own. I regret having not watched this movie sooner because I dug it. A homicidal car that repairs and rebuilds itself and kills the people who bully you. I mean, where can I get one? Seriously though, awesome film, far from scary or creepy, but it's a damn good watch. Number 26, The Cleaning Lady, a 2018 American horror thriller film directed by John Knotts and written by Knotts and Alexis Kendra, who also stars in the film. In it, as a means to distract herself from an affair, a love-addicted woman befriends a cleaning lady badly scarred by burns. She soon learns these scars run much deeper than the surface. Quite an interesting little film. What makes it so interesting is that the story and characters are set up in a way where even though what's happening is terrible, you have more compassion for the killer than you do the victims. It doesn't make the events reasonable or justified at all, but it changes the dynamic and makes it less predictable than what we see in other films of this nature. I like horror films that show us something in our killer that pulls at our heartstrings. It's hinting at the possibility of their redemption, though we never get it. You feel bad for the victims, but you know they're not the most moral of people, so you can't help but not feel too sorry for them. The pacing was good, one might say slow, but it actually works for this kind of film. I just felt as though the film was missing something. I'm just not sure what, but it's still a good watch, shocking opening and abrupt ending. Number 27, The Clove Hitch Killer, a 2018 American thriller film directed by Duncan Skiles and written by Christopher Ford. In it, a picture-perfect family is shattered when the work of a serial killer hits too close to home. This film is a slow burn. I mean a really slow burn. But it gives you plenty to reflect on and dissect along the way. It's interesting how it's a film about a serial killer, but not from the perspective of the killer or his victims or even the police. It's a perspective that isn't done very much, and so there were a lot of interesting avenues this film could take. It's clear who the killer is, but watching the events unfold was enough to keep me paying attention. It certainly didn't end how I would have expected, that's for sure. You can tell this film was heavily inspired by the BTK killer, and as I was watching it, I was thinking they may as well have done a film about him instead on account of it being so similar. But as it moves along, you can see it's definitely not an identical story. It's not abrasive, it barely has violence, but there's a tone to it that shows it belongs in the thriller genre. I'll just say this was actually a really good film, and Dylan McDermott was almost unrecognizable. Number 28, The Convent, is a 2018 British horror film directed by Paul Hyatt and written by Hyatt and Conal Palmer from a story by Gregory Blair. In it, during the 17th century, a young woman is saved from execution and led to a priory to repent for her sins, but discovers a greater evil lies within. It's not a terrible film, not by a long shot. I just don't get it. I mean, I kinda do, but I also kinda don't. And last in today's recap is number 29, Coraline, a 2009 American stop-motion animated dark fantasy horror film directed and written by Henry Selick, based on the novel of the same name by Neil Gaiman. The film depicts an adventurous girl named Coraline finding an idealized parallel world behind a secret door in her new home, unaware that the alternate world contains a dark and sinister secret. I've probably seen this a million times. In fact, I'd watch it on repeat quite often, and it's one of my favorite films to put on as I'm going to sleep. I find the score by Bruno Collais to be so soothing, and it relaxes me and helps me sleep. I really can't explain why I love it so much, but I do. And the intensity of the color in the other world is very entrancing, though I do admit I have always found the character Coraline to be quite unlikable in this film, though I still enjoy this movie. It's just an incredibly made film. That was long and exhausting. I am sorry, and now I've lost a voice, and that's so much time. I could have finished an entire movie in the time it took me to record this. Oh, good God. Anyway, if you want to follow my progress as I do this marathon, then go and follow me on social media, because I post each movie review as I watch a film on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. All of them. It's everywhere. But, or you can just watch the next recap video, as I will continue to do them if I can find a moment to do so and my phone doesn't close up. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Spooktober themed videos. I've got plenty more to come this month. But anyway, I've got to go because I gotta go watch movie number 30 on the list, which I'm already like 30 minutes into. So anyway, thank you again. Comment down below and tell me some of the films that you're watching if you're doing the 31 days of Halloween or whatever title you are using. But thank you as always to my patrons, and until the next video.